Okay, let's go. Okay, welcome to Wednesday afternoon at the Love Tutoring Festival. I am really pleased to see you here. I'll be running this session with you today, and I'm going to introduce myself as part of the session, really. So, Helen, if you could just make sure that people come in and are invited to turn their screens on. What we're going to try to do is get started, and I'll give you the context as we go. So my name's Julia. I launched Qualified Tutor. I launched Qualified Tutor 2 years ago. My background is in school leadership. I'm also a mum, and I talk about myself as an insecure tutor, and I'll tell you why in a second. So thank you to Nudge Education for sponsoring the Love Tutoring Festival, and to Manning's for sponsoring Wednesday. They're also sponsoring the Love Tutoring Library, where you can find the recordings from the first festival, and you can go ahead and find the recordings from this festival shortly. Ludo will be sending out Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday recordings this evening because he's incredibly productive and organized. And now we're going to do a little experiment. So I'm working on a book at the moment. I wanted to share the vision for Qualified Tutor in a book. And the editor that I've been working with said to me, what do people need to hear? And we did some really deep thinking about who the book is for and what they need to hear. And to be quite honest, some of the people for whom this book is written are in this room right now. And I know them well, and I care about what they need. And so what I did was I built a vision of somebody who knows that tutoring can be hard, and that tutoring can be lonely. And I've written a book that speaks to why that is and what another way might be. So that's where this language of Plan A and Plan B tutoring came from. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. And at this, first I'll tell you about myself and then I'll share screen with you. So I've got 5 kids, which means I had 5 maternity leaves, which means that I spent more time out of the classroom than inside the classroom. And every so often I thought, I should do some tutoring. And every single time, without fail, I lost my nerve on session 5. Now, I'm a primary school tutor. I don't do entrance exams. I don't have anything specific that I point myself to as a tutor. It's much more about building confidence, about alleviating anxiety, about all those sort of important but nebulous goals that are difficult to quantify. I'm the kind of tutor that has teddies on my desk and comic poetry books. And if you're counting, it'll be colourful pegs. And if you are drawing, then it'll be in colourful Sharpies. And that's because I deeply believe that learning can be lovely. And if you were in the sessions earlier with Dave Harris and Nina Jackson, there's lots of us that believe that lifelong learning is all about creating that positive experience that goes way beyond the classroom, which is great, but it is difficult to quantify. And so when the mum puts money in your hand at the end of the session, or when the parents ask you to discuss what progress the students made after 4 or 6 sessions, it can be difficult to prove that progress. And that made me extremely uncomfortable. It made me doubt my efficacy, and it made me lose my nerve. And I'd always blame it on the children. My kids need me right now. It's not the right time, that kind of thing. But I often let myself off the hook. So the book that I wrote is for a tutor who knows that tutoring is not easy, and that it can be lonely. And if you don't create systems and processes and emotional support and have clarity and a vision for why you're tutoring and why it can make all the difference in the world, then it's really difficult to be successful as a tutor. But if you can get your mindset straight and understand why tutoring is so important for children and for adults, why it helps, and what you need to be successful as a tutor, then you've really got a chance of enjoying this profession that can be fulfilling, flexible, and really make a difference with lots of people. So the concept of love tutoring is right at the center of that. Love tutoring is a question. Do you love tutoring? It's an invitation. Love tutoring. It's a provocation. And it goes way beyond that feeling that we have in our hearts of tutoring can be really lovable. It's also a message to schools, parents, students to embrace the concept of tutoring right in the center of what it is that we do. So now what I'm going to do, having given you that preamble, is take you through some of the ideas that I've been putting together in my book. And I'm basically test driving them on you. And I want to see how they land. So I'm going to ask you to use the chat tons. I'm going to ask you for your feedback tons. I'm really going to see if I can gather the thinking so that I can see if the material's resonating and augment it and improve it. If I pick up your ideas, which I do hope to, I will reference you and I will check with you wherever I can. And that's why I'm going to use the chat, because that way I'll be able to know who it was that said those things. So share screen, welcome. This workbook that I'll be working from today is very similar to the sessions that we do in Qualified Tutor. We always have a workbook that goes alongside the session, and whenever we do Qualified Tutor training, our learners have an interactive version of this that's a really useful takeaway. So the overview for this session is it goes in two parts. We're going to unpack why tutoring feels like Plan B, and then we're going to point towards what Plan A tutoring might look like for us. And that's really important to me. It's really important to understand that there is more than one right way. And the reason why tutoring is so effective is because it's so nuanced and so bespoke. And in the same way that no two students need the same tutoring experience, no two tutors need to work in the same way. That flexibility and that freedom is exactly what I want to point you to. It's just that flexibility and freedom is a bit scary. And so we need to create some norms around it as well. So I've introduced myself. Now I would like you to introduce yourselves. So this is going to be your first breakout. There's going to be 3 of them in this session. When we come back, I'm going to ask you to put your thoughts and answers in the chat so that I can harvest them myself. If there's anything you don't want to say or share, don't hesitate, that's fine. This is a safe space, and part of a safe space means you can choose. You can choose what you want to contribute and whether or not you want to hang back. But please know that we are curious and generous and reflective practitioners here. And we invite you to really engage deeply with this learning. So 3 minutes, which means 1 minute each. We're going to be in groups of 3. To just describe your current tutoring situation. Go ahead, we're going to give you 1 minute warnings to switch over. Keep going, off you go. Okay, you should have a button now. If you could join your breakout rooms, please, and discuss your current tutoring context. Sadia, Sarah, Angela, Mandy, Hania, you'll enjoy the session more if you manage to get a chance to get involved. Shall we pause the recording? You'll see them in a second.
Just spoken to them. They're so nice.
I love that. Everyone here is nice. Siama, we really want to see you. Please put your screen on. Thank you.
I wasn't camera ready, but yeah.
I know that feeling.
What's her name's?
You'll see her in a second. Hi, Mary Jane. How you doing?
Oh, I'm manic actually at the moment.
Really?
Yeah. But I will watch the recordings.
Fantastic. Viva's going to treat us to some recordings this evening, I think.
Oh.
He's going to be sending out the first few days. Okay, welcome back. Welcome back. Screens on, if at all possible, please. I really want to make sure content is landing with you. So please use the chat to firstly describe your own tutoring context. Go for it now. Yeah. What you're tutoring, where you're tutoring, who you're tutoring, and many students you've got. Yeah, one-to-one online. How many students do you have, Priya? Just starting out, Andrea? Yes, you are, Jack. Mostly teenagers face-to-face. Great. 7 primary students, teaching them at their homes in the evening with a couple online. Carol, go ahead and put a little summary of your current tutoring context in the chat, please. You're working out your client and your subject base at the moment, so you're looking at your niche, 7 to 8 maths, one-to-one. Excellent. Okay, so thank you. Yeah, and that combination between being a teacher and being a tutor is useful also. So, one more question for you in the chat, if you wouldn't mind. 3 adjectives to describe you as a tutor. Okay, you knows I like my 3 adjectives. Adaptive, caring, passionate, personable, inviting, learner. Important to see yourself as a learner, eh? Confidence building, wacky, encouraging, energetic, creative, and caring. What a lovely combination. Reflective, creative, and compassionate, loving, responsible, and wild. Keep throwing them in there, please. Caring, flexible, adaptable. So interesting to see the overlaps, and interesting to see how we're creating 3 adjectives that create balance. Fabulous. Really, really helpful. Thank you. So thank you for warming up. Thank you for reflecting, and thank you for being generous. I really appreciate it. So I started off by telling you that I'm an insecure tutor. Lucy's not going to give me a job. And that I'm not the best tutor around. But I think it's interesting to think about why. And in that reflection, I have thought about what barriers there are to tutoring. And I think some of them are the kind of myths and misconceptions that tutoring faces beyond what it is that we bring to the table. So some of these myths and misconceptions are inherited. Some of them are true, some of them are just old news. And I think that we're operating in a space that is particularly under-nurtured. So if you were in our session yesterday, the Business Tutoring Roundtable, somebody mentioned this phrase that the Sutton Trust used to describe tutoring, which is shadow schooling. Now, to my mind, shadow schooling is a terribly sad phrase because tutors cannot exist in the shadows and thrive. We cannot do our best work for students if we exist in the shadows, if we're in the blind spot of education. And I think that the Plan B vibe of tutoring, that lonely, shadowed space that some tutors exist in, is really born of the myths and misconceptions that we operate under. So I'm going to unpick just a few of those, and then I'm going to send you off to look at which myths and misconceptions you're operating under. They could be these ones, or they could be different ones. And there's no right answers around here. I'm just asking you to do your own thinking and hold space for that. So tutoring is for the most privileged. Well, maybe it's just old news. Maybe it never was true. Certainly tutoring costs a premium, but we know that tutoring is so much more effective in the classroom that it's not acceptable to leave tutoring with the most privileged. So let's look at the NTP for a second, the National Tutoring Programme, which in the UK is a very significant part of the COVID catch-up response that the government has put into schools. And we like to think that the intervention that tutoring can bring to schools will accelerate progress and enable students who have lost out on learning in the last few years to make progress. Now, we at Qualified Tutor really warn against a deficit model of learning because we're always moving forward from where we are, and telling children that they've lost out, telling anyone that they've lost out isn't going to help them to make progress, is it? So we're much more interested in looking to the good. But what we're talking about with the National Tutoring Programme is an opportunity for all learners to access the kind of learning that will make a huge difference. So let's look at Nudge Education for a moment, who are our lead partners at the Love Tutoring Festival. They are working with students with chronic disengagement. They're drawing down funding, and there's lots of us in this room who are doing the same thing. They're drawing down local authority funding to work with the students who really need bespoke support, who need you to go to their homes, alleviate their anxiety, take them to the park, and work on their readiness for learning. We're not looking at exam outcomes. The way Diego says it is, they can't join the race, they haven't even got the trainers on. So that work is way beyond this myth of tutoring is for the most privileged. And it's rather about tutoring is for those who need it most. I would take it further and say tutoring is for everyone, and I'll tell you that why in just a second. So tutoring is only for low prior attainers. Well, if you heard Gemma Zoe Smith speak on Monday, she was focusing on higher learning potential. So those are the students in the class who are not just bright, but gifted. And they may be gifted in one specific niche, and they may feel terribly isolated in the class and misunderstood by the teacher. And those students need somebody who will take them beyond the curriculum, who will enable them to do GCSEs very early, but more than that, who will allow them to go and explore their own curiosity and wonder. Tutoring is not a remedial intervention. Tutoring is a way to help us all make our best next steps. I'm going to get a bit personal here with the next one. Tutoring is for when the teacher has failed. So one of my kids, he's 9, had a terrible time in his first primary school, and he was failing to thrive because the leadership in the school was unacceptable, and he didn't feel safe. He was bullied, but the environment was so toxic that that was the norm. So my little person was failing to thrive, and bringing him a tutor at that time would have been the worst thing for him. It would have ramped up the pressure. He was not available to learn. We eventually were able to move him to a wonderful school. And fortunately, it happened the week that we closed schools for the first time in 2020. And that school closure was the best thing for him because he learned online and was able to detox from that first school. And then months later, when he arrived face to face in his new school, he'd had a bit of space to feel safe, to feel like a person, to hear himself think. A year later, he was ready for tutoring. That was a year of high expectations. It was a year of feeling safe. It was a year of being stimulated, of learning to build friendships, of playing football. And then he was ready. And so we brought in some quite intense intervention for him at that time. And he was working on a year 1 level, and he at that time was in year 3. And they dialed right back to the beginning of phonics, and using flashcards showed him all the things that he had just not had the opportunity to learn in the classroom. So to my mind, my son was only available for tutoring once the teaching and once the classroom was a success. That was when he was ready for the intervention. What about tutoring is for when the student has failed? So I'm going to give you another personal one here. I'm a disaster with going to the gym. If you stand me at the doorway of the gym, I'll probably be in my pajamas because I don't have any exercise clothes, and I will be terrified, and everybody else looks like they know what they're doing, and I really don't. I don't know how to do it. I don't know what to do, and I feel like a failure. But if you give me a personal trainer who understands my body and understands what my next steps are and can help me to scaffold and build some muscle, I might build some confidence, I might build some fitness, and I might be able to find my feet in a gym. And I think that that's really what we are as tutors. We are precise and we are enabling, and we can plan around a person's next steps and understand what's going to hurt and what barriers there might be. I find it a really helpful metaphor because It allows us to really have a laser vision for what our students need and what their next steps are. But more than that, it's about trust. I need someone to hold my hand and make me feel safe in a gym. And that's what our learners rely on for us. It's not that they failed, it's the classroom can be overwhelming. It's that stuff in their background could be making it difficult. It might be neurodiversity, or it might just be, might be 100 things, or a cocktail of many different things. But the point is that if the tutor can really see them and build trust with them, then the student won't fail. They'll make progress. And then this last one, tutors are failed teachers. Well, we've got lots of teachers in this room and not one of them is a failure. But some of us left school. Some of us left school to guard our well-being. Some of us left school because we're also looking after children or family members or wayward pets. Some of us have decided to choose a different route. And this is another thing that I'm really excited about at the moment. The idea that tutoring can be part of the progression route of an educator. That it's not that the only correct route for a teacher is to go through the classroom, up into senior leadership, and if you do a really good job, you get a school to look after. Well, I didn't necessarily want to leave the classroom, or I didn't necessarily want responsibility for, I didn't necessarily want to lead adults. I may well have just wanted to work closely with learning. So in the same way that we've got teachers who want to focus on being advanced skills teachers, we may have teachers who move out of the classroom and into tutoring to repurpose their skills. And we at Qualified Tutor are building progression routes for that at the moment. So we're doing some work with the Chartered College of Teaching to enable qualified teachers to become chartered teachers as tutors or as early years practitioners. But why does it have to be that there's a one-size-fits-all model for where teaching happens? So those are some of the myths and misconceptions that I was feeling when I was struggling to get past session 5 as a tutor. And the truth is, there's plenty more of them. But I wanted to give you some space to do your own thinking about understanding what barriers you face as a tutor. And I've only picked the low-hanging fruit here, if you know what I mean. I've only picked the most obvious things that you might hear, because really what I want to know from you is the deeper thoughts and the more personal ones. So we're going to send you back off into those same breakouts now that you've met your colleague. And we're going to ask you to take a little bit longer, between 7 and 10 minutes, to just think about some myths and misconceptions. And I haven't given you any note papers to write on in your breakouts, because I really want the ideas to land in the chat when you come back. So please do come ready to contribute your ideas to the chat. If you've got any questions, please put your hand up or hang back. But as soon as your breakout button is open, Helen, thank you, you can go for it. Can we pause recording, please? Some physical feedback. Let me know how that.
Hold on, Julia, we're still waiting the group.
Okay, that's okay. Give me some ideas about how it felt to have those conversations. Was it helpful? Did it make you feel good? Great, thanks, Priya. Okay, so please put in the chat some of the myths and misconceptions that you've been facing, and that's good, Andrea. That's exactly where I want to start. I want you to feel affirmation, and I want you to feel that you're not alone, basically. So what myths and misconceptions do you feel that you face as a tutor? Please go ahead and put them in the chat now. And I'm really, really enjoying what's going on in here. What myths and misconceptions? I'm glad that they were interesting. Please tell me what you said now. Not as valued or experienced as a teacher. Right. Agencies are bad. Interesting. What myths and misconceptions? Considering the money and the rates of tutoring. That's right. Tutors are magicians. We went a bit tangential, of course. We talked about points of view from parents. Interesting. About expensive and what values are. About qualified teachers, the responsibility of the schools, costs being considered expensive. Tutoring puts more pressure, interesting, on students. Well, we're just trying to help. Okay, so I once picked up the phone to somebody, a very, very wise and lovely person, and he said, tutoring? Isn't that the work of the devil? I was astonished. And really, he was talking about a specific view of tutoring that was about hot housing, the Wild West of teaching. Yeah, we've heard that lots of times, haven't we? Danielle wants to say thank you, Jack, because his book just arrived. And now he's going to go out because he understands that he's not supposed to be interrupting. Bye. Thank you. So let's think about how to get from plan B to plan A, okay? And we described that idea of love tutoring as a shared movement, something that parents and students and tutors and schools and society as a whole should understand is a really helpful thing to do, that tutoring is a really helpful piece that just hasn't been seen properly yet. So we're coming out of the shadows together now, and we're going to look at what plan A tutoring could look like. And there are no shoulds around here. We're not in the slightest bit interested in shoulds. What we're really thinking about is what choices you can make to make tutoring work for you. And so plan A tutoring is going to be a very personal thing. And it might be just the slightest shift from where you are now to what you'd like to be doing. It might be about how many students, it might be about what subject, it might be about the choices between online or face-to-face, but really the bottom line is going to be agency. It's going to be you having agency for your own work in practice. So let's look at these three elements, and then I'm going to send you off for another breakout. The first one is different types of freedom. So I learned this idea initially on a small business course that I did with Ramon Ray, and he made the point that in small business, you are choosing one type of freedom. So his counterpoint was this: when you're working in a big corporation, or in our case, when we work in a school, somebody else tells us what success looks like. Somebody else tells us where we're supposed to be. Somebody else tells us what time we're supposed to be there, what to measure, and they pay us when we expect to be paid, and we don't have to go and organize payment. It's a freedom to not worry too much and to hand over agency to somebody else to organize us. It's sort of like going on a package holiday. Somebody else will take care of everything for you. There's a freedom in working in a school, the freedom not to worry about these practical things. But there's a different type of freedom, and that's the freedom to choose your working hours. It's the freedom to choose who you work with. It's the freedom to choose what you're going to measure and what success looks like for you. It is exhausting, it is challenging, and it requires being really, really intentional. So if you're going to be successful as a Plan A tutor, you're going to need to work out what freedom you want and what that freedom looks like to you. You may choose to work for an agency, or you may choose to blend independent and agency work. You may choose to remain a solopreneur, or you may choose to take on other tutors to work alongside you because you've got too much business. You may choose group work, you may choose online, but you get to choose. So the second idea is know thy impact. Sharon Corley spoke yesterday so beautifully. And one of the really powerful moments in her talk was the moment when she shifted her focus. She stopped apologizing for needing to be paid at the end of the session. She stopped tolerating being delayed at the door, or parents not having cash ready, or people cancelling her last moment. She began to realize that the value of the input that she's giving those young people is more than the value of a manicure, more than the value of a visit to the hairdresser. And so she stopped being ashamed of asking to be paid for her work, because she understood the change that she was making. But know thy impact goes further than that, because it's actually inviting you to be reflective. How effective are you as a tutor? And how do you know? What are you doing to skill yourself up as a tutor, so that you don't hesitate when you ask for whatever hourly rate you think is right for you? We believe in Qualified Tutor that you should always be skilling up, and that the best way to be a part of this movement of raising standards in tutoring is to be focused on what your next steps are as a tutor at all times. So know thy impact is an ongoing understanding of what it is you bring to the table and how valuable that is for your students. If you heard Richard Evans speak yesterday, or if you've heard Diego talk about the difference that we can make for our students, at every scale and for every type of student, we as tutors can make a life-changing difference. We have to know that, and we have to make sure that we really are doing our best work. And then this last thing, Georgina, this always makes me think of you. Tutors need tutors. And that, of course, works on two levels. We need somebody alongside us. We need colleagues. Schools enable us to have peers, to have a staff room, to have a corridor where we can hear what the neighbours are doing. Kids and other, children walking down the corridor chanting times tables remind us that we need to do times tables with our own children. Somebody else's inspiring wall displays remind us that we need to refresh our wall displays. But when we're at home and we're working online, or we're going from home to home, or students are coming to us, there's nobody to compare your work to and to invite you to level up. There's also nobody for you to share your knowledge with. So tutors need peers alongside them. That peer support makes a huge difference. And we also need mentors. We need people who are ahead of us, who can point the way, who can answer our questions, and who can help us to get unstuck, because otherwise those ceilings in progress can seem impossible to break through. So if we want an army of professional tutors at every level, in all the nuanced ways that we can work, we do need this infrastructure of supportive tutors alongside each other. And if you know much about Qualified Tutor, you'll know that that's what we're all about over here. So this next breakout, and yes, we are going to give you another 7 minutes, so hopefully you can really go for this question, is to describe what Plan A tutoring looks like for you. And I hope that you can really bed in with this idea of freedom and take responsibility for describing the Plan A tutoring, not the one that should be right, but the one that actually is. Okay, as soon as you've got your blue buttons, you can go off and describe your Plan A tutoring.
Unrecording. Unrecording, starting to
No.
re-record. As they come back in.
They've all stayed, that means they're
They've all-
excited.
yeah,
Welcome back, welcome back. Okay, let's dive straight in. Sarah Lynn, what does Plan A tutoring look like to you?
So for myself, it would be to beyond my personal capacity, partnering with other people is really powerful. And because the focus that I have is on moving through emotional healing, about finding and connecting with other individuals who have that. Because I think especially with this festival, I've realized that what I thought was the thing that kicked me out of the classroom because I was the ugly duckling is actually a superpower, and something that a lot of other people are really starting to kind of go with themselves as well. So it's been really kind of exciting to take that next step.
Hands up if you thought you were an ugly duckling and you've just discovered a superpower. Yes. Okay, thank you. Siama, can I call on you?
Yes. Sorry, what was the question? I just came.
What does your Plan A tutoring look like? Describe it to us, please.
So I myself am not a tutor. I work for a tutoring agency called
Okay.
Tutors. So
Mhm.
I'm here to kind of really understand the world of tutoring, gain more of an insight, just so that I can, have that kind of deeper understanding and connection when I'm speaking with tutors on a daily basis, really kind of seeing it from that world. So yeah, I'm not a tutor myself.
Siama, what you've done there is you've opted into our vision of love tutoring. It's a really shared vision, and we're really glad to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Who shall I pick on? Carol, can you tell us? First mute, unmute.
Sorry, I'm a very experienced tutor. I do maths, English, A-level psychology, AQA.
And what does Plan A tutoring look like for you? What is tutoring the way you really want it to feel like?
Well, I don't know. I tend to find a bit of a blockage when I get to a certain number of students that I just can't really take on more.
Yeah.
Maybe I've got about 7 students at the moment, and I'm actually registering with my agencies, you know, grading myself out.
Yeah.
So
you feel
so
like you feel
I'd
like
like,
seven is
I'd
the
like,
right number for you?
well, it is. I sort of want it to take off a bit more. And then I find that I get to, and like at the end of the term, I've just, you know, I'm really tired. And so, but it's probably just my age. That's what I can do.
Well, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because you wonder, is it the headspace of the number of students, or is it logistics around it, billing and organisation and that kind of thing, which Georgina could help you with?
I do use agencies as long as they pay me my proper rate.
Yes.
I use agencies, so they often deal with the billing. So I haven't got that many. A few that I have to chase up for the money, but not very many.
Excellent. Thanks, Carol. I'm going to go on to Katie. Is that okay? Was there anything else you wanted to share?
Not really.
Okay, thank you. Katie, tell us about you. What does Plan A tutoring look like to you?
Well, now after going into that breakout room, is that I am going to, even though I still work in a school part-time, I'm going to partition that and leave that back at school. So now my tutoring, as much as I kind of know some of my parents want me to kind of help their child be successful at school, I'm driven very much by a right, what are your targets, where do you be, how can I help you with that? And that actually I'm going to move more away from that. Thinking about this particular child I taught yesterday, he didn't do anything for 25 minutes. Instead of kind of recognizing him, I kind of said, oh, you're going to do your learning. So yeah, so my plan A is going to be more holistic in my approach, and try and pick up some more home ed families, and trying to switch off my teacher. I can't think of the word for it, but you know, when you've been like programmed and conditioned to think away, I need to kind of, for the moment, partition that, focus on this, and then hopefully that can feed into my school and I can be the teacher that I want to be at school. Yeah, I'm very emotional. This has been amazing. Thank you.
I'm really grateful for that. Thank you so much. And it's a beautiful place for us to stop. So thank you. Just so you're clear, this is my Plan A. This is absolute heaven for me, because I am crazy inspired by the difference that you're going to make to your students when you have this slight mind shift. When you embrace the freedom of describing your own Plan A, we're going to have tutors that are more confident, more empowered, more articulate, more professional, more engaged and more supportive of each other. And that's going to benefit all our students. So as I told you when I started out this conversation, my background is in school leadership. And as a school leader, I learned that the best way to improve outcomes for the students in the classroom is to develop the teachers who are working with them. And so here we are developing ourselves as tutors, because it's no longer okay to exist in the shadows. We have to embrace a more loving vision of tutoring, because tutoring needs more love. So thank you so much for engaging with this. This evening, I guess you've seen already, we send out a feedback form every evening. I will be supplementing an extra couple of questions for those of us who have been in this session today. Please do me the kindness of filling them in so that I can really understand what worked well in this session so that I can improve it. And thank you so much for engaging deeply with this. Thanks, guys. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Julia, for delivering that. That was an awesome hour's work. And if your name is in Julia's book coming out this autumn, then don't be surprised. She will contact you first to check that that's okay. But please show some support for Julia. She's done a fantastic job in rousing this community and helping to deliver this festival.